Okay, let's call the Urbana City Council meeting to order. We will begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Mr. Bowersox?
Here.
Mr. Garrick?
Here.
Mr. Lewis?
Here.
Ms. Marlin? Here. Mr. Roberts?
Here.
Mr. Smythe? Ms. Stevenson? Mayor Pressing?
Here. The first item is approval of minutes of the previous meeting. We have two, August 17th and August 24th, a special meeting.
Second.
Okay, there's a motion by Smythe, seconded by Lewis, to approve both of these. Any additions or corrections? If not, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, that motion carries. Are there any additions to the agenda? No additions? Okay, petitions and communications. Darrell Cruz? Oh, you want to speak at the time? Okay, that's fine. And you also would like to speak at the time? Brian?
Brian, I'd like to speak early on if I could.
Do you want to speak right now? Okay, come on up. We know your name, but would you please repeat your name and address for the record?
Good evening, I'm Brian Dolliner, and I live at 303 West Locust in Urbana. I'm here tonight to register opposition to propose $19,000 to help complete the clock tower restoration and the renovation of the courthouse in general. This proposed $19,000, especially at this time of the economic crisis, could be put to better use. Secondly, in effect, this is twice taxing Urbana residents to pay for the clock tower. The numbers have been grossly underrepresented in the local media, in the News Gazette, and even on Will 580, that the total cost of the clock house renovations is $1.5 million. The actual total cost is $6.8 million. The 1.15 is in the private donations. So what's been suppressed, I think, in the local media is the high price tag for the clock house, the courthouse clock tower work. The private donations should be left up to private donors. That was the plan in the beginning, and that's how it was sold to the public. The private donations should be raised privately by this citizens committee, which I like to point out is not a wide collective of citizens, but is headed by mostly ex-courthouse officiators, and the honorary chairman is a former judge. So this doesn't exactly represent, I think, the will of the public. I'd like to also suggest other things that the $19,000 could be spent on, especially in this time of economic crisis. The Daily Bread organization has opened up in Champaign. They're a new soup kitchen that's taken over the work of the Catholic Worker House. They're raising $200,000. This $19,000 would be much better spent on a local soup kitchen. In regards to the current housing crisis, we could set up a fund for a relocation fee for those who are evicted because landlords have become bankrupt and individuals have been immediately evicted and within a short matter of days being asked to leave their homes. If we're really interested in local art and local history, I would propose not a Lincoln Museum, but some kind of memorial to the Chief Schumacher, who's the real chief here in town, not some phony mascot, but Chief Schumacher, who was born just here in downtown Urbana, just a stone's throw from the so-called Founders Park. Chief Schumacher, he's responsible for giving the Boneyard Creek the name, as I understand. And yet there's no markers downtown of Chief Schumacher's presence. There's a park, 13 acres dedicated to him northeast of town, Chief Schumacher Park. But I think in downtown there's a real need for his presence when these were his stomping grounds, really. The Native American history in these parts really needs to be taught to the children. What happened in the case of the courthouse is, in order for its construction in 1855, as I understand, a burial mound was wiped out, leveled, and erased so that they could build the new clock tower. So it's a way in which the clock tower erases our history, and which, if we are going to dedicate some memorial to local history, I think it's much more better use of money to dedicate it to Chief Schumacher and the real history of the chief in Urbana. And lastly, if there's any time remaining, I'd like to again insist that we think about how the clock tower looks to the people who come and go from the clock tower day in and day out. And I'm not here just talking about the judges, the lawyers, not just about the public defenders, not just about the deputies, but about the poor people and the people of color. If you spend a day in the courthouse, you'll see these people come and go routinely from court cases. And I can't help but think that they come out of the courthouse and look up at all this money being spent on the courthouse and the clock tower, and not feel some great injustice is taking place. We were in the courthouse last week, and there was a woman who was in the court. She could not afford $150 to bail herself out of jail. She spent 5 days in jail because she had put her trash in somebody else's dumpster, and she ended up in city court. She couldn't afford $150. So in these times of economic crisis, when the poor and people of color are feeling the brunt of this, we need to take action towards addressing the crisis, not towards just another feel-good kind of image-making campaign, as such as the clock tower is. Thank you.
I
Usually
wonder,
questions.
I think that the clock tower, are you combining the courthouse renovation with the clock tower? Because my understanding was the total cost of the tower itself was $2 million, and it was totally volunteer funds, except for what the city of Urbana contributed.
So the city of Urbana has contributed already to the
We have
courthouse construction.
TIF money. They're in the downtown TIF, and that money was for downtown renovation, and so it couldn't be spent in the way that you suggest, because it is dedicated money.
Well, if you'd like to find other kind of bricks and mortar projects to dedicate the TIF money to, I don't know exactly what the TIF money is designated for, but I think we could think of many other things, ways that we could put this money to use on some new outreach center, some new public education, adult education classes, a new center for adult education.
I think it was primarily donations to the tower. I don't think it was $6 million. I think it was a $2 million total. And I wondered if you're combining the courthouse renovation in your numbers there.
As I understand, the $6.8 million of the county sales tax that's going to the courthouse, and an additional $1.2 million that's being raised to raise the tower an additional few dozen feet and put all the nice perks on it that go along with it. They could have built a shorter tower. They could have eliminated some of the amenities. But instead, we have this grandiose clock tower. As a friend of mine said, a bottle of Viagra is cheaper.
Okay. Thank you. Anyone else?
Yeah.
Thank you. Oh, Dennis.
Yeah, I just wanted to correct one of your statements. Of course, you realize that the clock tower is merely being restored. It used to be, it looked like that when it was originally created, and then lightning strikes required it to be relowered because of damage to the top part of the bell tower. So basically, we're doing a historic restoration on that. And it was designed by Joseph Royer, who was like a very prominent architect locally. So there's good positive reasons to indulge the restoration of a significant downtown building. But I'd also like to say that it's the fifth courthouse to stand on that location, so it did not displace an Indian burial ground. You may be thinking, however, of Lille Park, which is a city park, and that did have Indian burials, but the courthouse did not. It was property owned by the Busey family. So it was just open farmland with hazel bushes.
Mm-hmm.
That's actually
Okay, that's good to know. I know some of the history. I'm a historian myself, and it's hard to always pin down what happened in 1855. But thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there anyone else who'd like to address the Urbana City Council? Okay, let's move on. I don't believe we have any old business. Reports of standing committees, the Committee of the Whole.
Yes,
Diane.
the Committee of the Whole met on August 24th. And on behalf of the Committee of the Whole, I move approval of ordinance number 2009-08094, an ordinance approving and authorizing the execution of annexation agreement for 2707 Airport Road, Terrence A. Bielewski.
Second.
Okay, motion by Marlin, seconded by Lewis. Are there any questions or discussion? Would the clerk please call the roll?
Mr. Bowersox?
Yes.
Mr. Garrett?
Yes.
Mr. Lewis?
Yes.
Ms. Marlin?
Yes.
Mr. Roberts?
Yes.
Mr. Smythe?
Yes.
Mayor Pressing?
Yes. Okay, that motion carries. Ms. Marlin.
On behalf of the Committee of the Whole, I move approval of ordinance number 2009-08095, an ordinance vacating a portion of Sycamore Street north of Park Street.
Motion by Marlin, seconded by Smythe. Any discussion? Would the clerk please call the roll?
Mr. Bowersox?
Yes.
Mr. Garrett?
Yes.
Mr. Lewis?
Yes.
Ms. Marlin?
Yes.
Mr. Roberts?
Yes.
Mr. Smythe?
Yes.
That motion carries.
And on behalf of the Committee of the Whole, I move approval of ordinance number 2009-08-096, an ordinance amending Schedule J of Section 23-183 of the Urbana Local Traffic Code, prohibiting parking at all times on certain streets, Johnson Avenue, Hollywood Alley, and Glover Avenue.
Second.
Okay, motion by Marlin, seconded by Gehrig. Any discussion? Would the clerk please call the roll?
Mr. Bowersox?
Yes.
Mr. Garrett?
Yes.
Mr. Lewis?
Yes.
Ms. Marlin?
Yes.
Mr. Roberts?
Yes.
Mr. Smythe?
Yes.
That motion carries. I don't believe we have any special committees. Reports of officers. Tom Carino, our Economic Development Director.
Evening. I have a couple of items tonight. One is to bring to the public's attention an item that you have before you, a call for art, the Urbana Sculpture Project. As part of the Philo Road beautification effort, there were a series of public meetings to speak with the public about the things that they wanted to see along Philo Road, and one of those items was an extension of Meadowbrook, the Wandell sculptures along Philo Road, and in response to that, we are issuing a call for art, which will be based on the model that the Park District uses in Meadowbrook, which is a lease model where we are asking for artists to submit existing sculptures, images of existing sculptures, where we will evaluate those, work with the public as part of a public selection process, and install those pieces temporarily along Philo Road as part of a lease agreement for 2 years. And then also another location is the mini park near the Iron Post, where as part of the construction of that, a base was installed to handle a piece of public art, and to this point nothing has been installed there. So we are asking for submittals of existing art for us to lease for installation along Philo Road and near the Iron Post. This has gone out, and we are currently soliciting images of existing art. So that is moving forward. Also, before you, there is the upcoming annual meeting of the Economic Development Corporation of Champaign County, and you have some information related to that annual meeting before you. And then as far as the monthly economic development report, you should have received that electronically earlier today. Activity downtown includes construction continuing on V. Picasso. Staff attended the opening of the Echo facility on the Carl campus. La Fiesta on Philo Road is now open, as well as Frogs and Fairies at the Pines now being open. And although we have not had a UBA board meeting, anecdotally, the Sweet Corn Festival was very successful, thousands of people coming downtown, lots of ears of corn sold, and just generally good positive activity in downtown Urbana. And then as we, when we have our UBA board meeting and have some official statistics, I'll be sure to get those to council. That's all I have. I'd be happy to try to answer any questions you have.
Charlie?
On the sculpture project, are you talking to the Park District and tapping their same sources?
Yes, we've had official discussions with Park District staff, and we also, Robin Hall, the chair of the Public Arts Commission, was instrumental in organizing the sculptures at Meadowbrook. So we have some resources to draw upon.
Diane?
Do you intend for this to be a serial installation, so when these 2 years are up for these sculptures, we do another 2 years? Is that how this will work?
Well, the way it works at Meadowbrook is there is a 2-year lease, and if the public is, if the public sentiment is that the piece has been enjoyed and they want to keep it there, they either extend the lease or they work with the artist to purchase the piece. So I expect we will probably work in a very similar way, where if the piece is very well received and the public wants us to work with the artist to either keep it longer or keep it permanently, then we'd work to do that.
Okay, thanks.
And also at Meadowbrook, other people can buy the sculpture and donate it to the Park District, and that's what we were kind of envisioning, that if somebody likes something, their family could buy it, and they'd have a little plaque saying that they bought it. Okay, thank you very much. Any other reports of officers? Okay. Robert Myers, our planner. Oh, you're coming for the next topic, okay. Business. Ordinance number 2009-08-097. An ordinance amending ordinance number 2008-12-148, approving and authorizing the execution of an agreement with the Urbana Development Group, a not-for-profit community development corporation, for loan guarantee support.
In December 2008, the Urbana City Council approved an ordinance authorizing the execution of an agreement with the Urbana Development Group for loan guarantee support, and that ordinance authorized the mayor to sign the loan guarantee support, the program, essentially, if you want to call it that. What we'd like to do is come back with a housekeeping measure to clarify that the mayor is also authorized to sign the individual loan guarantees on behalf of the city council. When the city council set up the program, you all were clear that you wanted this to be an administrative program to offer some flexibility in timeline, that each individual loan guarantee wouldn't have to come to city council, but that the group would come back periodically and make a report to this body, and that's exactly what we plan to do. So with this housekeeping measure, we can move forward with a planned loan guarantee for a property. This would be the first, in fact.
Motion by Bowersox, seconded by Roberts. Any discussion? If not, would the clerk please call the roll? Mr. Bowersox?
Yes.
Mr. Garrick?
Yes.
Mr. Lewis?
Yes.
Ms. Marlin?
Yes.
Mr. Roberts?
Yes.
Mr. Smythe?
Yes.
That motion carries. Next is ordinance number 2009-09-102, an ordinance revising the annual budget ordinance, and this is for Solo Cup screening. Libby Tyler, our Community Development Director.
This is a proposal that was brought to the city by the management at Solo Cup. Came out of a retention visit recently. Solo Cup, as you all know, is a very major manufacturer in Urbana and serves customers internationally and provides several hundred jobs, temporary and permanent. And Solo Cup is interested in being a good neighbor. They do have residences fairly close to their operations on the west side. And they have asked the city if the city would be interested in a simple cost share for a major landscaping project to help to buffer and beautify a portion of their facility that is close to homes along Hartle Avenue and Stout Drive in particular. There's an aerial photograph. The proposal would be to have a simple 50-50 cost split for a heavy planting landscape screen along 240 feet of 40 arborvitae trees, and there's an example of what those trees look like. They're a very effective screen, and at their cost, Solo Cup would be installing these and providing for the landscape area inside their property line fence. This would help to buffer visually and acoustically some of the operations of Solo Cup and help provide a more permanent screen for the neighborhood directly to the west. It's a modest, relatively modest cost request of $1,800, which is the split for just the landscape portion. And this is not a budgeted expense for the city, so it's coming before you as a budget amendment from the Capital Improvement and Replacement Fund. Any questions?
Diane?
Who's responsible for watering this to get them established? Just curious.
Solo Cup will be responsible for maintaining. It's within their property. They'll maintain the screen.
Charlie?
And we alluded to the report from the noise consultant, but when will we actually get something back from him?
We have some work from the noise consultant, both on some preliminary work on Solo Cup and more work on the Myers property, and he is working directly with Solo Cup and our environmental staff person to take a focused look at some of the noise sources. So that's a separate concern. This landscape screen will help somewhat, but probably not a huge measurable reduction. I think it's more, going directly to the source. If there's a fan, for example, that we might be getting complaints on. And I did mention in the memorandum, over the years, we've had some noise complaints about Solo Cup noise, and they have been very responsive about providing mechanisms to muffle the noise where it's created, and done a number of mitigations.
So this is more just buffering?
Yes, I think so.
Visual screening, I mean. This is more for visual.
Primarily visual. It will reduce, if there's some operations on the grounds, those will be pushed back somewhat just because of the screen. And there's a psychological benefit as well to the screening.
Yeah, something I didn't understand was the way the railroad comes in. So the rail line has to go down and comes back. They have to back the cars in, don't they? Into the siding. So the siding runs at the edge of the property then? Or the siding is outside their property?
Yes.
So the siding is, the railroad right-of-way then is between the houses and the
Yes.
and the
Oh,
then
Solo
they
Cup
back the
properties.
cars
And then they
into
back the cars up
Yeah.
in
To the
here.
property.
Yeah, I've always wondered what's in the middle of that field up on the south side of Solo Cup, because there's a
They plant it. It's I think there's some bunkers. There's some material in the middle of the field.
Is that part of Solo Cup? Is that somebody else's?
They own that, and someday they could expand.
Oh, okay.
But I think there's something from a prior owner. There's some concrete in the middle, but most of it's planted in corn right now.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, but that is owned by Solo Cup, and if they need to
So
expand in
so
the
the railroad
future.
goes all the way down to the end there before it hits the road.
Yes, you
Yeah.
can see that on the map. And the railroad, I mean, there's a lot of volunteer planting along there, but at any point, railroad comes in and clears that out, as can utility companies, and it's really not a good screen. It's not permanent, It's not planted, it's not uniform. So this would provide for permanent evergreen screening that Solo Cup would be able to ensure is always there.
Is there a motion? Dennis Roberts.
Sure. I'd be pleased to make a motion to accept this ordinance. I think it shows that, Solo Cup is at least trying to work with the city to modify and abate some of the problems that we've had in that nearby neighborhood. And I've heard from several residents since being on city council about the concerns with that. It's good also to know that Solo Cup is still willing to work on specific problems as far as mechanical apparatus that's attached to their buildings, so that some of the noise during delivery and moving some of the material from storage areas down chutes into the rest of the building can be addressed as well. I do realize that at one time in the past they had done some muffling of some of their feeding chutes into the plant, and it could be that it's time to look at that again. How much the trees will abate the noise, I guess we'll have to find out over a period of years when they start being mature. That'll be an important thing. But certainly it's good to have a screening of some type there, and so I think it's worth the investment. So I make a motion to go ahead and approve this.
Second.
Motion by Roberts, seconded by Marlin. Any further discussion? Would the clerk please call the roll?
Mr. Bowersox?
Yes.
Mr. Garrett?
Yes.
Mr. Lewis?
Yes.
Ms. Marlin?
Yes.
Mr. Roberts?
Yes.
Mr. Smythe?
Yes.
Mayor Pressing?
Yes. That motion carries. Next are a couple of appointments that I would like. Sustainability Advisory Commission, Jean Ascoli, and the Neighborhood Safety Task Force, Jeremiah Sullivan.
Move approval.
Second.
Okay. Motion by Smythe, seconded by Gehrig. Any discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That carries. Thank you very much. Next, these are a couple of motions that I can't make, but I would suggest that we act on. First is a motion to split the $38,000 that we approved for the Lincoln Museum in the courthouse and have $19,000 go to the clock tower restoration, where it will be matched by a major donor, and give the remaining $19,000 as Urbana's contribution to the Lincoln Museum. And Durrell Cruz would like to address this.
Thank you, and good evening. I guess the question I would like the City Council to ask themselves is if they feel it's appropriate to take city taxpayer money and contribute it to an optional beautification project on a county-owned building. I think most people agree that the finished product of the clock tower is a very impressive sight, and that the steering committee that's raised the money deserves a great deal of credit for the work that they've done, and there's no argument with that at all. But I guess one question I have to ask is, should the taxpayers of Urbana be making contributions to the capital development of another governmental body-owned building, namely the courthouse? And if one looks at the donors list that has been compiled regarding contributions, one will see that Urbana is the only city or governmental body that thus far has made a contribution to this particular project. And I'm not sure what the amount of it was, but I think I recall reading somewhere it might have been around $40,000. Somebody can probably affirm what it was, and evidently it was from TIF money. And I guess my question becomes, why hasn't the county board contributed $1 to it? Why hasn't the city of Champaign contributed $1? Why hasn't Rand Tool or anybody else? The courthouse is not the responsibility of the city of Urbana. It's the responsibility of county government. And One of the reasons that the restoration of the clock tower was developed the way it was is because the county board did not have money to do the clock tower restoration. This was an optional. It was not a required building project. It was something a group of citizens felt was very important to do for historical purposes, but for utilitarian purposes or the functionality of the courthouse, the additional $1.22 million to restore the clock tower has no useful purpose to what goes on in the courthouse other than the historical significance that it has. And so when one looks at the fact that the city of Urbana is considering, if it's already contributed $40,000, and I think it's important for people to know that if I would have known that, I believe that $40,000 of TIF money should have been spent for other projects for Urbana and not for the county. Okay? It's almost like asking, do you think if we wanted to do a renovation or restoration, if it was feasible, of City Hall, do you think the county board would contribute $40,000 to Urbana and say, yeah, we'd like to help you improve the historical significance of City Hall? Basically, that's what you're doing. My question is if the courthouse was in Champaign, would Urbana be making a contribution to the restoration? I doubt it. I think the reason you're doing it is because it's located in downtown Urbana. But that's not the issue. Okay? It's a county courthouse, as I understand it. Okay? And so that the money should come from the county. The other point I'd like to make is that the funding for this was supposed to be privately raised. If the citizens of Urbana wish to support the project, they can. Every citizen in Urbana can make a contribution privately without a conflict of interest in terms of using taxpayer money. For the city council to make a decision on behalf of the citizens of Urbana who do not wish to support the restoration of the clock tower, you are exempting our ability to do it. That's why it was set up the way it was. The steering committee said there would be no taxpayer money to the restoration of the tower. It was supposed to be privately raised. The citizens of Urbana can contribute. The city of Urbana does not have to do that. As a matter of fact, I would suggest to you, if the citizens of Urbana realized the city was contributing potentially $78,000 in total to the entire project of the clock tower and the Lincoln exhibit, they would be asking themselves, couldn't we have used this money locally for our own beautification projects? Couldn't we use it to meet some of the needs that we have locally in other ways? And I would suggest to you, several months ago was asked, well, could we possibly put an extra $100,000 into social services to help the needs of people in our community? Oh, where are we going to come up with $100,000? You're looking at contributing almost $78,000 to the renovation of a clock tower. Another issue that is raised, 60% of the people in Urbana live in rental housing. And we know these are difficult economic times. And we've had issues locally in terms of people, because of no fault of their own, being evicted from their apartments because of utilities being closed off, or rental apartments being condemned by cities, not receiving notice, and being very financially strapped to relocate. Again, $19,000 in an emergency housing fund to protect the 60% of the Urbana residents that might face some type of emergency, to provide 1 month's rent and a security deposit to help them relocate instead of putting them into the street, and to be able to collect that money back. You could do that. You could use it for rental at the mall.
Durrell,
Yeah.
I think you've reached your 5 minutes.
Well, I think that there's a better use of the taxpayers' money. They can contribute if they want. I hope Urbana is not the only city government that contributes to it, and would like to see that money used in our city for our residents
Durrell,
and not for that.
You did say that we contributed $40,000.
I don't know.
That is not true.
Okay.
You do not know, and I don't think you should be saying that we're, contributing money that we didn't contribute. However, there is a reason that we are contributing and not Rantoul and not Champaign, and that is because Urbana would not be here if it were not for the courthouse. We were founded as the county seat, and in recognition of our 175th birthday, we did donate $15,000 to the courthouse clock tower restoration, because that is the centerpiece of our downtown.
I understand. It's
Okay.
also a government-owned building.
It is a governmental building. You
Yes,
are
it's not
correct.
Urbana's. Yeah.
Charlie?
Well, Durrell, I think the question I'm asking myself, and I'll ask you this, is that it's not money from the general fund. This is money out of the TIF, which is specifically directed for redevelopment of downtown, for beautification of downtown and other economic development projects. And so the question that I'm asking myself is this a valid expenditure of TIF funds? It's different from the taxpayers' general funds. And of course, being a government building, it's owned by the people, regardless. Okay, so the real question is this a valid TIF expenditure? We've spent $15,000 already. Now we're being asked to spend another $18,000 of money that we were going to spend for a museum. That's, again, also part of the whole downtown aspect. Again, a TIF issue. So it's a reallocation of money that we've already committed ourselves to doing. And in this case, we get a matching funds here. So I'm torn because, are there better? But the real question is there a better use of TIF funds within the allowable TIF expenditures? And that's the same question that was asked of Brian. And that's the underlying thing here is it's not general funds, it's TIF funds. Is it a valid expenditure of TIF?
I think you have the option of possibly using TIF monies for that.
That's what we're using. This is TIF money.
Exactly. Okay. But my question or my thought is that when you look at the success of the private donations and you look at the committee that's doing it, is that something you feel is in other words, can that money be raised privately and the city use its $19,000 for other purposes downtown? Because they're going to raise the money. And if the courthouse, even though it's a historical building and it's why Urbana's here, it's not Urbana's responsibility for maintaining it any more than a county board. I would love to have seen some public body somewhere recognize the courthouse has significance on a county basis or a community basis. But no governmental body has put TIF money, any public money, into this project except Urbana. And you don't have to use the TIF money for that. And I think they'll raise the money and you can use that for other capital development needs that Urbana has downtown. I would suggest that there are a lot of people who would feel that would be a better use. Let the committee raise the money. You don't have to, you made a contribution already. They're very close to meeting it. Use the money for other needs downtown or in the TIF district in light of the circumstances that we find ourselves in, the economic needs of Urbana. I just don't think it's a wise decision at this point to be using more TIF money for that.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
And having said that, I would like to make a motion that we follow the directions in item 4 on our agenda for new business, a motion to split the $38,000 approved for the Lincoln Museum in the courthouse so that $19,000 goes to the clock tower restoration funds, which will be matched by a major donor from the private sector, and to give $19,000 as the contribution from Urbana to the museum at its base. And I would like to comment in support of that motion that having talked to Hal Smith, who is the leader of the state bicentennial district for Looking for Lincoln, as part of one of the projects that is supported by federal funding. This is a federal district that was established during the bicentennial era of Lincoln's birth to promote Lincoln sites in the central Illinois area, and of course, we know that Urbana was one of the stops on the 8th Circuit, Judicial Circuit, which Lincoln was often here in town. He slept in hotels in town. He worked and tried cases in the previous courthouse, and currently, because of the installation of the museum at its base and its as a new function and as a tourist destination in our community, and the plan to create a new podcast incorporating Lincoln's journey in Central Illinois, specifically focused on the Urbana Courthouse and the new museum, I think that supporting it at this point is an excellent move by the city of Urbana to encourage tourism and foster redevelopment downtown, and to encourage new sales as a spinoff from that income that would come from the added tourism in our area. So I think this is a really excellent way to support that, and I would encourage people on the council to also do so.
Is there a second to the motion? Okay, motion by Roberts, seconded by Marlin. Is there any other discussion? Brandon.
Yeah, just briefly, I guess I'll vote no on the motion. I have to say that I totally support the museum and our contribution to it. I think it's really going to have a public benefit to teach people about what Lincoln did here. I'm excited about the museum. The tower is beautiful and is an addition to the downtown, and I'm a supporter of the project, but at this point, kind of think similar to my feelings about the newspaper stand, the Urbana stand, that I think the public sentiment is let's not spend money on some projects like these if they don't have such huge benefit. Let's save the money in the TIF fund and put it towards some of the projects like the Boneyard and things that we really want to accomplish as a high priority downtown. So my preference would be to continue giving to the museum, but to not give the other half to the tower piece. And I hope they raise the rest of the funds. I know it's already built, which is great, and I'm excited the tower's there and it's a big piece of our history. But that's just my feeling about where the public sort of stands.
I would point out that the donor is going to match money that is raised in September. And we were asked by Bruce Hannon, who is the instigator of this whole funding, to make a contribution, and that helped them get to their goal. So I think it is a great addition to the downtown. Anyone else? Diane, sorry.
I appreciate Darrell's comments, and I too have thought a lot about this, and I am going to support this motion, and for the following reasons. Some practical and some a little more intangible. One is that we do have the opportunity to leverage this, or double the donation, leverage this $19,000 into a $38,000 contribution. I like to finish what we start, and this will put them closer to finishing this project. I do think the tower is a symbol of the downtown area, and it's an historic restoration, and it will contribute to economic development. The intangible part of this is, as I hadn't realized how glorious this tower would be until I saw it completed, and no matter where you are, in anywhere north, east, and west of downtown, you see that tower as a symbol of Urbana's downtown. And I hope whatever plan we come up, as we implement our strategic plan and our Boneyard plan, I hope that we can incorporate this clock and bell tower into our visual identity and our visual elements. And I'm particularly struck when you're coming into Urbana on Cunningham Avenue, which is a gritty drive from the interstate to downtown. Suddenly you approach, you're going past all the auto dealerships and the Arby's and the McDonald's, and suddenly there on the hill you see this clock and bell tower, and it just is stunning. And we didn't have that before. And I don't know if you can put a price on it, but I think it's worth way more than $19,000. And again, I appreciate the arguments on both sides, but I'm going to support this.
David.
Well, I wanted to say that I think both Brian and Darrell made a very important point about what is it that we choose to invest in, what do we choose to use our money for. In this case, there is the constraint of general funds versus TIF funds, and so it doesn't really quite equate as one from column A, one from column B. So I think that it's important to understand that Urbana does, I think, do quite a bit in terms of social programming. There's always room to do more. I think that it's not going to be necessarily at the expense of something like the contribution to the clock tower. I think when we take a look at the clock tower, you can't even say it's a contribution to the Urbana skyline. It is the Urbana skyline. And it's so central to our history, to our downtown, and I think that it's such a gorgeous thing. I'd like to go ahead and support this motion.
Anyone else? Charlie?
Well, if it's the antidote to Cunningham Avenue, then I think you have to support it. But it does suggest that there is a role for a public-private partnership in working towards improving things like Cunningham, improving the downtown. We have some big projects that we have in mind working in downtown, and if we support this, I would expect some of those same individuals, some of those same corporations to embrace our vision for downtown and for Cunningham Avenue and for University Avenue as we go forward to match or try to match the tower. Again, I think I made it perfectly clear that the issue here is this an appropriate expenditure of TIF funds? And I've argued for the expenditure of some TIF funds for other public art. So it is a fairly difficult decision. You have to set priorities, but if it leverages our future plans for downtown, for Cunningham Avenue, then I think you have to support it.
I would like to say that many of us sitting on the council have contributed privately to the courthouse clock tower. And Urbana was not listed on the Looking for Lincoln map in Illinois, even though this was a critical place in Lincoln's life. He practiced law here in the 1840s and 50s. And because we have the marker in Busey Bank parking lot where the studio where he had a very famous photograph taken, and now we have this wonderful Lincoln Museum. And Durrell, I would urge you to go and see that museum. It is a little gem. And maybe you would open your wallet and make a contribution if you see it. But I mean, I do think it's a very worthwhile use of tax dollars, which are supposed to be used for economic development, because if you get a beautiful looking downtown, that encourages more businesses, that encourages more people to come and see it, because it just beckons people to the downtown. So any other comments? Dennis?
Just an interesting historical comment. There was a time a lot earlier, I think it was like in 1859, where there was a plan to remove the courthouse to West Urbana, which was being incorporated as Champaign. And the plan was to put to build a brand new beautiful courthouse in what is today Champaign, and Westside Park was set aside for that beautiful location. And it was the action of the city fathers at that time in Urbana that saved the seat of government for the community of Urbana itself. And what did they do? They reconstructed from the ground up the courthouse that was on the square. This is the previous courthouse. And they built a brand new one in 1860 to avoid the removal of the seat of government to a different location in the county. And the premise that they did at that time was that they needed to have a brick structure to safely house from fire the city records and the county records. And that was the premise for which they built a completely new 3-story courthouse. Now we're merely rebuilding a tower on the current courthouse, and talking to the gentleman whose firm rebuilt the structure. I learned that the brickwork of the tower was fairly severely compromised, and that it was a very wise move to remove the tower completely to the ground, establish a new base with iron pilings and, iron support columns all the way to the top of the tower, and then rebuild it using the existing bricks. So it was not only to the good of the beautification of the city, but it was also a safety feature for the city of Urbana. So just historically, it's not the first time that people have worked on our local courthouse to bring health and welfare to the city of Urbana.
And it should be pointed out that the city of Urbana contributed earlier to courthouse clock towers as well. The city has for many years, many centuries, seen this as central to our downtown. Anyone else? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Nay.
Okay, that motion carries. Thank you. Next, I've taken a look at the possibilities of raising money for the newsstand, and I will say that the proposal, the artist's proposal was built around a commercial newsstand. So if someone in the future wants to fulfill that vision, I would think we should have the commercial one there ready, but we shouldn't hold up the whole project. It's a very beautiful redoing of that courthouse square, and it'd be nice to have a attractive-looking newsstand. So the second thing I would request some action on is a motion to purchase a commercial newsstand at a cost of approximately $4,000 for the courthouse square, and use $9,000 of the savings from the original $15,000 budget to provide matching funds for recent contributions to the Art in the Park project at the city building. And Carl Weber has been raising money on that project, and he did send out some information on it for you. We're going to go visit the artist on September 15th and hope to have this project finally completed this fall. Is there a motion on that one? Diane? Okay. Motion by Marlin, seconded by Lewis. Any discussion?
I just wanted to say that, Mayor,
Yes.
that indeed I received a letter from Carl Weber, and I intended to pass it out to you, and I will do so as soon as I locate it.
Okay. Charlie?
I'd like to make a motion to split the question. I'm not sure.
Yes. Is there a second to that?
I'll second.
Okay, David seconds it. Okay, so you want to vote on the 4,000 first?
Yeah, I mean, the 4,000 for the newsstand is one piece, and then the separate discussion on the other. And if I could speak to the motion, the split motion.
Yeah, the original motion was, who made the original? Oh, Diane, right?
Yes.
And who seconded it? Marlon and Lewis. Okay, all those in favor of the 4,000 first?
I'd like to simply state why I wanted to split this is that we currently have allocated a certain amount of money for a project involving a newsstand. Purchase of the newsstands doesn't block that project, to which I'll speak more on this on the next issue. But I don't want to block the purchase of getting started on replacing what are very ugly newsstands. So I fully support that piece of this motion.
Can you clarify what you just said?
The purchase of the newsstands doesn't preclude moving forward on Urbana Stand should a fundraising effort take place and so on. We currently have $15,000 allocated as city funds for that project. And I just wanted to split the issue here. That's all. So.
Aye.
Okay, that motion carries. Let's vote on the $4,000 July commercial use.
Can I, if we purchase a commercial newsstand, will we install that commercial newsstand? As a standalone
Right.
project?
But that was going to be the center of the art piece.
Right.
So if it's there, it'll be in the same location. If someone came along with 50, whatever it was, $60,000, that could still be done in the future. But we don't want to spend the city money on that, $66,000. We want to just spend $4,000.
Okay.
Any other questions? David?
So the 4,000 includes any kind of engineering and installation, not just the pieces?
I think that that's correct. Is that correct, Libby? The 4,000 would cover the installation, because it just, I think, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Anything else? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, then you're going to make another motion?
Well,
Charlie?
there's another motion, which is to spend,
Okay, to spend $9,000 of the savings for matching funds for the recent contributions to the Art in the Park project.
Yeah. And
That's this year's budget.
that's 9,000 out of TIF, out of the 15,000 we have allocated for.
Right. You take 4 from 15, you have 11.
We have,
And I'm
including this year, would have 20,000 minus 4. We'll have 16,000, including the coming year. We have
No,
another
we have a
5,000.
budget of 15.
Right, that doesn't include the current year we're going into. I thought we had another 5,000 in this coming year in the TIF for,
I don't think that was ever, I don't think the budget was ever changed. You said you wanted that to go to a committee, but I don't think we've ever changed the budget. So the budget right now is 15,000.
oh, okay, I thought we were doing I thought we were putting $5,000 a year into
That project?
into art projects for the downtown
Okay,
art. So
I think we just had this one.
we just have 15,000 in there. We don't have another 5
We
coming.
have 15,000 in the budget for this? I think that's what we talked about.
Tom's looking for the page.
But anyway,
Well, yeah,
this is just, we can fix the budget if the budget's not correct, but
Okay, well, I
the
guess.
original plan was to spend
Yeah.
15,000.
I was on the city council when the project outside was first begun. It's dragged on for nearly 20 years. Maybe it is 20 years now that this has gone on. And it seems like the project's gotten more and more expensive. We keep putting, we've done increasing bits of essentially streetscape around it. I'm sort of tired of putting money into this project. I just wanted to see it get done. Maybe that's one way to say it. Let's just get it done. I'm not willing to put this money in until I see the actual project delivered and put out there. If it were contingent on delivery of the finished product, then I could vote for it. But until I actually see the product delivered, I can't put any more money into this project.
Okay, this is for the manufacturing of the actual sculpture. And Carl Weber has raised money, and he's detailed that in a letter.
Yeah, there's a
that he
packet.
sent.
Everybody has
Yeah.
an article.
So- He's raised another $22,000, and he wants to raise another $8,000. And he told me he needed another $9,000 from us as matching money to get some donors to contribute. So that's why I said $9,000. I see he says $10,000 in his letter today. But Brandon.
I support this one, so Charlie, our roles are reversed between this and the clock tower. My one question, and Mayor, maybe you know the answer to this, is I just wanted to make sure I understood. In the presentation from Carl Weber, there's a diagram about, what would happen if we fund the project, but we don't get enough funds for the spiral lit piece in the middle. And I'm hoping that these funds are the final funds so we can get the spiral lit piece in the middle and all of it will be done, but it just wasn't, the wording of it wasn't totally clear.
Well, yeah, I thought it was very important to get the spiral, and I was hoping to get Charlie's vote because the artist is going to use LEDs.
I said I have no problem paying for this if I actually see it delivered. Okay?
All right. Okay, do we have a motion?
Can I ask one more?
Okay, Diane. Yes, Diane.
I think the motion's
Now, who
there.
made the second motion here? Oh, this is your split. Okay, so this is Charlie and David's motion. Sorry about that. This doesn't happen that often, so I'm not real good at this. Okay. Okay, all right. Diane.
So my question is, we've got $4,000 for the commercial newsstand. We're using $9,000 toward this art in the park. And that takes up $13,000 of the original budget of $15,000. Now, where does the kill fee for the artist come from, assuming that there's a kill fee for the newsstand? When do we do that?
That is something that has to be negotiated, and we really can't discuss that publicly at this point.
Is that a future?
Yes.
That's sometime in the
Yes.
future? Which we won't know until we know.
Well, we'll have to vote on it.
Okay.
But it hasn't been determined yet, but we might have to have a closed session on it. Okay, any other questions on this one, Charlie?
The other aspect is that if somebody were to step forward, willing to go out and raise the $60,000 needed to make Urbana Stand a reality, we're not closing it out with this vote. So this simply takes the current $15,000 or $13,000 of the current planned monies for art and reallocates them. And like I said, if there were a contractual aspect to this that said, on delivery we will pay an additional $9,000, I could support this motion. And that's the only thing that's stopping me here is that I just feel like we've been dragged on for 20 years on this project. I'm just tired of it, going on and on. It was originally supposed to be neon. That was the Vogue thing 20 years ago, and now we're talking about LEDs. It may very well be. Neon's probably very expensive to fire up. So, but like I said, I would be maybe I should just simply make a motion. I'll make an amendment that the $9,000 is contingent on delivery of the project.
Is there a second?
I will second that
Okay.
motion.
Motion by,
Amendment?
a motion by Charlie to amend it to say the $9,000 is conditional upon delivery. And that's seconded by Dennis Roberts. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, that motion carries. Now we have an amended motion to provide $9,000 upon delivery of the art to the project. We will pay $9,000, okay? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion carries. Thank you very much. Okay, now the next thing is a closed session for property acquisition. Is there a motion? You have to spell it out.
Yeah. Second.
That's perfect. All right, is there, and seconded by Charlie Smythe. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Mr. Bowersox?
Yes.
Mr. Garrick?
Yes.
Mr. Lewis?
Yeah.
Ms. Marlin? Mr. Roberts?
Yes.
Mr. Smythe?
Yes.
Mayor Pressing?
Yes.
I'd like to make a motion that we go back into open session.
Motion by Gary, seconded by Roberts, to go back into open session. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, we're back into open session. First item is ordinance number 2009-09-098, an ordinance approving the purchase of certain real estate, and that's at 205 South Urbana Avenue.
I move that we approve, that we purchase the real estate at 205 South Urbana Avenue.
Second.
Do you think that we could just do these in an omnibus fashion?
I would move that we make them in omnibus fashion, these three items, number 7, 8, and 9.
What about number 10?
And 10?
It
Let's keep
is?
that separate.
All right. Okay, so there's a motion to take items 7, 8, and 9 in omnibus fashion.
And I'll read the ordinance numbers: 2009-09-098, 2009-09-099, 2009-09-100.
Would the clerk please call the roll?
Mr. Bowersox?
Yes.
Mr. Garrick?
Yes.
Mr. Lewis?
Yes.
Ms. Marlin?
Yes.
Mr. Roberts?
Yes.
Mr. Smythe?
Yes.
Mayor Pressing?
Yes. That motion carries. Next is ordinance number 2009-09-101, an ordinance approving the purchase of certain real estate at 107 East Oregon Street.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Smythe, seconded by Marlin. Any discussion? Would the clerk please call the roll?
Mr. Bowersox?
Yes.
Mr. Garrick?
Yes.
Mr. Lewis?
Yes.
Ms. Marlin?
Yes.
Mr. Roberts?
Yes.
Mr. Smythe?
Yes.
Mayor Pressing?
Yes, that motion carries. There being no further business, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much.